The Iron Claw, directed by Sean Durkin, also was just released and it stars Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, Holt McCallany, Maura Tierney, and Lily James. I've never been really into wrestling, so this is my first exposure to the story of the Von Erich family. And they were a family of wrestlers, and this depicts their rise and fall and their powerful impact on the world of wrestling in what I would say is a very gritty and sort of like emotionally heavy, but also almost like swords and sandals kind of way. In the way it depicts like sports in Texas in a cool way. And the cast is terrific. Let's start with you. What did you think
Yeah, man.
overall?
Yeah, so I am growing up big fan of wrestling. I'm a '90s kid, so I grew up in the Attitude Era of Stone Cold, Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker,
Yeah,
Mankind, D Generation X, and all that stuff. So I, with having that background, I knew of the Von Erich families, but I didn't know all the intricacies and the details and the tragedy that came with their story. So I was kind of, I heard of the family, but didn't know the details. But this, like you mentioned, man, was very emotionally satisfying to a sense of like you felt the weight and the emotion and the heartbreak that came with their story. It's like in my full review of the film, I said they're kind of like the Kennedys in a sense of all the tragedy, but
oh
the
wow, that's
consistent
yeah,
tragedy that they see that they couldn't foresee. And the sports angles, like this is a sports film, which one of my favorite sports movies in the past decade is like Warrior, and it depicts
absolutely.
wrestling as something that can be fun and entertaining. And growing up, everyone wrestling's fake, and it's like sure, there's a scripted element to the sport, but there's also a lot of pressure that goes into being a WWE or WWC, or WCW champion, and what comes with that, especially the story where you have this father who his glory days he was never able to achieve his goals, so he put all of that pressure on his sons and his kids, and it just it destroyed them ultimately, as you'll see in the film, on a physical level, a mental level, and what came with that is just a tragic
Mhm.
story. So, yeah, I thought Sean Durkin, who the only other film I've seen of his was a film called The Nest in 2020, and he seems to do an excellent job of depicting, the intricacies of like what a family, the pressures of family, and image what that means to a family, how it can kind of tear them up from the inside out. And man, the performances
That's the
across
one
the
with
board
Carrie
were
Coon,
so good.
right?
Gary Coon and Jude Law. Yeah, it's a very quiet,
Okay,
intimate
I haven't
kind of
seen that one
family
yet. This is my
drama.
first that I
Yeah.
saw of him.
hmm Yeah, it's an interesting film. But yeah, no, I thought Durkin did a great job, and the performances were great, especially from Zac Efron, who I was never a High School
Yeah.
Musical kid, but I knew of that side of his career. For better or for worse, to put him on the map. But I've liked Zack Snyder, Zac Efron, and
Zach
Neighbors, and
episode.
his comedy beat. I think he has great comedic timing.
Comedy
But
like
this
Ted
one,
Bundy. No.
Yeah, the hilarious film with Ted
No.
Bundy. But no, I
Just kidding.
thought he really went into his bag in this one. And to me, again, not having seen all of his previous work, but I think this is his best role to date. Like he really makes
Yeah.
you feel for Kevin, the big brother. And there's a line in this film that's just like heartbreaking. So I thought the whole cast was great, great story, and one of the biggest hits of the year for me as far as like just being so engrossed and in love with how this film came together.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. I really loved this movie. I went in, I saw the trailer because I think I had seen like Priscilla or Napoleon or something, and it played in front of the
Yeah.
movie. But again, I only found out about this movie existing like a month or two ago because it wasn't one of the ones that was like heavily marketed until the end of the year. But I really loved it. I saw it in an early Dolby screening, and it was a full, really big auditorium. A lot of people showed up to see it on like a Wednesday night, and I really loved the way, first of all, that the way it's made because it starts out as like this, narration heavy, fun, entertainingly edited wrestling biopic. It sort of shows you the glory of wrestling and these brothers hanging out. There's some needle drops that are fun, and as the movie goes on, like it's almost like the wrestling starts to matter less, and you just feel the heaviness of what they're going through, which is sort of bringing you into the mindset of Zac Efron's character, which I thought was beautifully done on part of the directing and the editing. And
Mhm.
as an older brother of two, we're we're three boys in my house, and
Mhm.
as the oldest, definitely the movie really hit me hard, especially with Zac Efron's character and what he goes through. Like, there's a part where like Jeremy Allen White comes home, and then they all go out to this party, and he just yells at the top of his lungs like, "Look at my beautiful brothers!" And it's this very lovely dynamic that they have at the beginning of the movie, which
Mhm.
goes against maybe what I would expect, because a lot of these sports movies would maybe show you a bit more of like a toxic masculinity heavy dynamic,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
actually have a really good dynamic because even though they love wrestling, they love being together at the end, and that kind of
Yeah.
sometimes clashes with the dad's ambitions for them, because what he wants from them is he's supportive. He does say great job and all that,
Yeah.
but he you kind of get from their interactions that they can't really say no to him. Like, they feel
Mhm.
like they have to make him proud, which I
Right.
guess weighs on like him having failed to get the championship, like you said, and him really like being ambitious to have this destiny for his kids. And Holt McCowney, we didn't mention, is absolutely
So
incredible, I
great.
think.
Yeah. Mhm.
um, which I'd seen him in the show Mindhunter, which I
Yeah.
thought he was great into, and he was just absolutely amazing. Like, if anything, like if the movie does want to touch on toxic masculinity, it's through that character, because he
Right.
kind of just wants them to be heavy and be hard and keep going,
Mhm.
and go into wrestling, uh, even through the most horrible of tragedies.
Yeah.
And Efron, like you said, he has some really difficult scenes,
Yeah.
and he is just absolutely amazing. And I also think Harris Dickinson was
Mm.
really terrific here, because he's
That's
someone
right.
who's around a
Right.
lot now. Like, there's a scene where he's kind of like talking to the camera, and he's like, "We're gonna bring the Iron Claw to you," and I
Yeah.
really
Talking to
loved his
Mike.
energy in this movie too.
No, like you said,
But
man, the entire cast really brings their game, and to that point of Harris's character, yeah, I love him bringing that. Again, the sports entertainment side of wrestling really captured that really well. And even the young man who plays the young brother, I believe, is Mike. Even his,
Mike, yeah.
everyone in this film complimented this movie perfectly. Even Lily James, who I think is probably one of the more bigger names from the younger cast.
Hmm.
She doesn't have a ton to do, but even she
Hmm.
leaves an impression of being, a supportive wife, and someone that pushes Kevin to try to, you have your brothers and your family, but you're now building your own family, as they have in this film. So yeah, everyone just kind of complimented each other really well. And yeah, these performances are really really strong.
As they keep growing, you kind of understand like how their dynamic, like the way they were raised on, um,
Mhm.
impacts their fate, unfortunately. And the movie kind of asks, like, can they escape that? Or they, on like the Von Erich curse is what it's famously known as,
Mhm.
whether you believe in curses or not. But it's like Kevin trying to thwart his own fate
Yeah.
um, while reckoning with the absolutely unimaginable. And Jeremy Allen White, also great in the movie.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, the guy who plays Mike, they all showed like their struggles and their physical pain really well.
Mhm.
Um, and again, like there's this really cool underdog element to them, and you love seeing them together as brothers. But
Mhm.
then, just as importantly, there's like this theme about a father's role in the life of the children, or
Right.
the role of grief throughout someone's life. I thought that was really well portrayed, and it's easy for either this movie to fall, because we have so many sports biopics, to sort of
Yeah.
fall between the cracks, or to fall into melodrama. And
Mhm.
for me, again, being an older brother, maybe it just hit so hard for me, but I really think they nailed the emotion here,
Mhm.
while being so uncompromising with it, but still being, I guess, very true to what grief can look like when someone loses someone that young, which is, horrible what Kevin Von Erich goes through in this movie. But
Yeah.
also, again, I think there's that entertaining side to the boxing, and some really cool boxing scenes. Sorry, not I keep saying boxing,
No, you're
wrestling.
good. Wrestling. Yeah.
Sorry, very different things. Wrestling scenes.
Yeah.
You were saying it fine. I was not. Um, while there is those cool wrestling scenes, like,
Mhm.
that becomes less and less the point of the movie,
Yeah.
as is Kevin Von Erich's journey. And there's some really interesting choices with the filmmaking that just make you feel like the movie is getting darker and darker and more uncompromising. It definitely not only made me want to read more into the Von Erich story, but definitely made me just want to recommend this movie to because it definitely for me stands out among sports movies.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Definitely once it makes you want to learn more and and I guess just to kind of, you know, not necessarily throw off the good vibes of the film, but sometimes as far as negatives, it does kind of fall into some of the tropes of biopics. Like we have, it's stereotypical montage. There isn't knowing a little bit about more of their story. There is some things that they kind of, and again, this is with any biopic, Priscilla, Napoleon. We sometimes miss even Maestro more recently. They don't go into all the intricacies. Like there's
Mhm.
literally a brother in this film, Chris, their younger brother, who's not in this movie at all, who plays into their story and plays into the tragedy. So there's like little
Oh,
intricate things that they kind of missed out on due to timing and scheduling that I thought they could have fleshed out a little bit more. But again, there's just so much good to be had and so much goodwill this film had with me that some of those things that I would have liked to explore a little bit more were not dismissing it, but can definitely appreciate the story that they did give us here.
right. So I did see Sean Durkin actually maybe saying this today or yesterday that there was one brother that they left out because he thought it was one too many tragedies for the movie to handle. Which,
Mm-hmm.
look, I understand it being a heavy movie, but definitely from the perspective of someone who knew the whole story beforehand. Me,
Yeah.
I knew that I didn't even know like which of them were going to die because I just like, didn't know as much of the background. I kind of purposely just wanted to see what was going to unfold in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but definitely that's an interesting point. And but yeah, as a whole, I do think again Zac Efron kills it.
Yeah.
Holt McCallany, Harris Dickinson, Lily James. The whole cast is great, and overall, it's such a heavy movie, but definitely leaves you with so much to think about with really fleshed out character dynamics. And again, you may have seen these different like filmmaking techniques and biopics like it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something about the character dynamics and something about the performances and the delivery of the emotion that really sticks with you after
Yep.
this one.
Yep. I agree. I agree. It's like I
So
said, and this is
you,
always, A24. They my favorite studio, man. They always tend to give us something
yeah,
that sticks with you for sure.